Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 7 of The Up. My name is Kristin Louise, and this has been a passion project that I usually record at my house, joining you today from Panera and hoping the sound quality is decent. There has been so many things this summer, great things, busy summer. I am the stay-at-home marketer, and a lot of you know that I've got a daughter, and I have spent a lot of time this summer just trying to, we have a summer bucket list, like many families do, and just trying to soak it all in. Had a little sabbatical from the podcast. Essentially, I always wanted to keep the podcast going with the purpose in mind of it being a passion project. I didn't want to rely heavily on sponsors. At one point I did. And just like wherever the spirit kind of led me to go with it. I didn't want to, the UP stands for the Universe Provides, if anybody hasn't heard that. I felt like that was spiritual. It didn't exactly hold us to just one topic because, that's what's up. Like it could be anything. And I have gotten the nicest feedback, especially on the last episode, and I wanted to really be present last week. I did some volunteering. I worked for an arts camp locally and volunteered for VBS, and I just didn't want to spend any time doing any kind of work. Taking away from that, didn't have a lot of time to give. And really just sat in gratitude this week of how far this little project has come. I was lining up the rest of the guests for this season, so I think I've got 6 more episodes left. Basically, I do about an interview a week, and that will bring us through the end of the summer. And I was thinking about the first episode and sitting in my basement. I was worried about lighting. I was worried about a lot of things that really didn't matter, as it turns out. I certainly wasn't worried about views. I felt so called to do this project. I wasn't worried about views. I'm still not. I've been blessed with sponsorship dollars toward this, and I've also been blessed with rebroadcasting opportunities. And I am floored, and thank you. I don't know a ton, admittedly, about podcasts. I have been on quite a few, and I did have my own one season of a marketing podcast way back when. And I had one when I was at William Woods as a student, and that's been a long time ago, but I don't know a lot about it. It's not something that I feel like I'm an expert in, but it's just something that was in my heart of Kristin, broadcasting is your background, you're a digital marketer, you've got something to say. And it has really floored me, the kind things that were noted after Brandon and I's interview. I guess that would have been 2 weeks ago now. Had a little hiatus last week, and I really feel like I re-listened to it twice, as you always should. So that's kind of my first little takeaway tip, is if you are an aspiring or a present author, speaker, creator, you really should listen back to your things. I know it can be really hard. We hate the sound of our own voice. I know there's a bunch of psychological things behind that, but I really, on the second listen through, focused a little more, to be honest with you, because I have a very severe ADHD attention problem. So I did listen a little bit more, and what I heard was unscripted, because these aren't scripted, and what I heard more than that was a ton of vulnerability. And I've been a huge fan of Brene Brown's for I don't even know how long. I think I discovered her way before she became mainstream because of some of my own interests in emotion and research. And I just love so many of her books I hold dear. Her most recent one, Atlas of the Heart, is one of my all-time favorite books. And I always aimed to share a lot of book recommendations on the podcast, and I did that in season 1, and I feel like I've barely talked about books in season 2. I think the interviews have been so good, and I go so long on the interview and I don't talk enough about books. So I do plan to do that and integrate that back into the episodes. I did something that I talked about on Facebook, and I want to talk about it here just for a second. I asked my staff, the people that work with me day in and day out, that know me, that help me create content, and understand my brand, I asked them things that I should bring back from the archives. Like, what are some segments that I've done before that we haven't done in a while, or you guys liked, or is there something that somebody else is doing that you think would be interesting, or an idea that you have? Like, those things are always on the table, but sometimes I believe as like leaders, and especially me just living in a very busy summer season with my daughter, I forget that we have to ask the questions sometimes to get the answers that we want. We can't just rely on people coming forward with the information. And one of the things that 2 of the 3 staff members that I have said pretty quickly was, "You're a good yapper." Like, we miss yapping. And that tracks with a lot of the feedback that I've gotten on Facebook too. And so I want to yap at you today with purpose. So we're yapping with purpose, and today's topic is there's this group of gals at the dance studio that my daughter and I go to, and they have found my social media, which is great, whatever, it's not hidden. But I got to know them really well, really got close with several of them during the recital this year, and they've really latched onto my daughter, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. The same thing happened in a small group from church. Some older kids really took my daughter under their wing, and they're just wonderful to her, and I really appreciated that. And when you are an only child, which I am, or if you have an only child, which I do, that wasn't necessarily the plan that way, that's the way it is. I think that one of the worries of any parent of an only child is absolutely loneliness. And what I've seen in my daughter recently that I wanted to talk about, and like what I saw in these girls at the dance studio, was such kindness and such inclusion. These girls are way older than my daughter. My daughter's 4. These girls are 10 to 12 probably. And they love spending time with her, and they include her in all of the things. They're all on the competition dance team together. And it's such a great cycle to witness and be part of. I see that in the volunteers at church. We have like some middle and high school volunteers in the kids area at church, and I see that in them. I saw that at VBS last week. If you guys aren't from the States or don't know what VBS is, it's Vacation Bible School. Our church is pretty large, and it requires a lot of volunteers. So I saw a lot of older students mentoring younger students, and a lot of great things there. And then I spent a week with I'm around preschoolers all the time. I've got one. And so I spend a lot of time around those age of kids, but I don't get to spend a lot of time around high school kids. And I did last week for MAD Camp, Music Art Dance Camp. And it just made me emotional in the best way, because it renewed my faith in the next generation. You hear generations trash on each other all the time. Oh, we had to do this, you guys don't have to do this. Sometimes it can be funny and whatever, but like, there are some amazing young humans within my orbit, within my sphere of influence, within my proximity, whatever you want to call that. Like, they are incredible. I know a couple of them are probably going to listen to this, and I just want to give you, this is short and sweet today, but I want to give you a pep talk on, first of all, just because people are older than you does not give them the right to treat you any certain way, and you can always stand up for yourself in a kind way. I think if I was younger, if I would have heard something like this, it could have been impactful for me. So that's why I felt called to do it today. And as I mentioned before in the somewhat meandering intro, but I got here finally, I felt super called to use my voice in this project in a variety of ways. And today, it's not like you can't listen. If you're a parent, I would love it if you listen to this and let your kids listen to it. But I really want to speak to somebody that's younger than myself, probably still a middle or high schooler, and say, here's some things and some boundaries that are really healthy. I'm not a specialist of any sort in boundaries. I do have a communication degree and stuff, but it's not coming from that. It's just coming from the things that I saw last week and kind of taking in a few situations. And these kids that I know that are within my sphere of influence, and people are going to talk about your generation. They just are. People talked about my generation for different reasons. And they're going to, talk about, the peak of video games was this, and that's because that was their favorite video game. You're going to do the same thing later. But what we can't allow, and that's fine, that's just normal human interaction, that is just what it is. But what we can't allow is because of someone's gender, because of their race, because of their age, any other specific quality about them, that they get to be rude to us, or they get to hold any kind of power in our minds based on their opinion. And that's a really hard one. As you grow up, you got to learn that one for yourself. But I love the protective ownership that I see of these older children taking from my daughter. And I know that if somebody talked to my daughter that way, they would stand up for her. So it's time to have a generation that comes through that stands up for themselves. So a few things happened to me as I interacted with various humans over the last week, whether it be parents, whether it be other adult volunteers, whatever. I mean, whatever the case may be, humans in a coffee shop, wherever. And it's never okay if somebody comes at you with a feeling. Let's say you express a feeling to somebody. Feelings are always going to be valid. It's what we do with our feelings that's most important. Let me give you an example. So I was very displeased with a situation that I found myself in last week. And I took that situation to two people. Those people listened to me and did not dismiss my concerns. They did not interrupt me. They did not belittle me for my emotion. And I do feel like that happened a lot of my upbringing. I do feel like I am a sensitive person and an emotional person, and there were many times in my life where I should have stood my ground because the emotions I had were always valid. Perhaps my actions were not always the best, and it was a coachable and teachable moment, and that's totally fine. We should all help each other grow. But my emotions were valid. And I just noticed in this one instance where there was an elder person that had really spoken inappropriately to a younger student. And I just noticed the kids around all completely shut down, like completely. And I know what that's like, and we've all been there. I've also witnessed this in adulthood, where something happens in front of other people, and we say, that didn't happen to me, so that didn't affect me. And there's things you could Google, like the bystander theory. And essentially what that is a theory in psychology that says, people will just walk by something that doesn't affect them, called being a bystander, right? I want to challenge young people that have found this podcast somehow online, and they're following me and are interested in what I have to say. I want to challenge you to not be a generation of bystanders, and to stand up for each other is the most important thing. I've been doing, it's a 10-year research study. It still has 2 years, so I'm right in the middle of it, but doing a research study that includes social media and online communication, electronic communication. And bullying is something that happens everywhere. It happens in real life, especially in schools. It's a very real thing, but it initiates a lot of times on computer-mediated communication, which would be something like social media on your phone, on a laptop, whatever. And it's really hard. There are many sad examples that I could give of times where I have felt bullied. I'm sitting here in a Panera recording a podcast. I mean, I'm not a cool cat by any means, but I have learned over the years how to stand up for myself and how to tell the right people and how to figure out who the right people are. And last week when I found myself in a situation I was not pleased with, I was very happy with the people that I went to in those situations and their swift action. And if I stood still and did nothing, I would have been a bystander. And things would have ended differently. I can't, predict the past, but in hindsight, things would have ended differently in both situations. And I believe speaking up even when it's hard, is never going to be a waste of your voice. And I understand some of us are much more naturally inclined to do that, and maybe you're like, what is she getting at? What I'm getting at is you have a lot of power in you, no matter what your age is. And just because somebody is older, has more experience on a topic, it does not allow them to treat you in a bad way. So an example that I wanted to give was what would be considered yelling, raising a voice above speaking tone, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm speaking. I'm not whispering. I'm speaking at a normal tone. But if I yell like that, people should never yell at you. And if they do, then you have the right to ask them not to. Doesn't matter the age. They shouldn't yell at you. There's a difference. Sometimes there's an unruly class, and the only way you can get their attention is to yell. But if you have done something wrong, and maybe even if you feel like you deserve that voice being loud, it still doesn't mean it's the right thing for them to do. And I actually went and apologized to some kids after I saw another adult and how they handled a situation. And those kids, one of them cried immediately. That would have been me. Because they couldn't believe they were getting an apology. But those kids, even if they did something wrong, didn't deserve what happened. And nobody's perfect here. It's not about being perfect. It's about learning what's acceptable and what's not acceptable for yourself, and then standing up for others too. I never want to say you should stand up for others in a violent manner. I'm talking about using your words here. I'm not talking about pushing, shoving. We had some kids last week at camp and at VBS that both couldn't keep their, extremities. That's just going to happen. That's what's going to happen when you're dealing with kids. And that's not appropriate. I'm not talking about fighting here. But you taking a stand could mean the difference for somebody between them being able to sleep that night, between them staying in a safe environment, at home. It could mean a huge difference. And I feel like young Kristin would have wanted to be apologized to after that manner of communication. So let me give you another example. I don't want to divulge a bunch. I don't want this to be a vent session. I want it to be productive. I think a lot about my daughter now that she's getting older. And I will be very vulnerable here, and I will share that I completely lost my cool with her yesterday. It's only the second time it's ever happened. I'm a very calm, I'm more likely to cry than I am to yell any time of the day. That's just me. I am not an angry human. I am not. However, we all have things that happen that will trigger us, and I was very overstimulated, and I was very annoyed that she would not repeat what she said, and I pulled over the car and I yelled at her. And she's 4, and you're probably thinking, oh, that's terrible. I didn't hit her. Nothing like that has ever happened. I wouldn't. But, I was frustrated, and I have not been sleeping super well, both with the heat, just in general, it's just so hot, but even with fans and even with air conditioning, it just feels humid around here. But my dog, I'm not sleeping well. My dog is not doing well, and he's up and down in the middle of the night. And it's just like having a newborn some nights. And so I'm not the best version of myself. Those aren't excuses to treat people bad. But immediately, I didn't, it just happened. And immediately my first instinct is to have her come to the front seat to talk to me and apologize and explain how wrong that was. And she was crying, of course. And it's okay to apologize, and it's also okay to stand up and ask for an apology for yourself or someone else. I hope she never has to ask me for one. I don't want that to happen, but I am a human, and it was a situation where the music is loud and the air conditioner's on high. It's extremely hot outside. I drive a black car. You see, I like to wear black clothing. Just like all the things, all the stars aligned. I was already running late. Had forgotten my shoes for the gym. These aren't justifications. This is just explaining in life you can have all those things, but that little girl knows without a shadow of a doubt how sorry I am. And I told her I'm going to do better. And I told her again later how sorry I was. And those are the kinds of things that I want to see for the next generation. None of us are perfect. We're all going to have an off day. I absolutely feel horrible. I told a friend, we had a play date with a friend yesterday afternoon, and I was like, I just got to tell on myself and just say this out loud. And, you know, I felt terrible. It doesn't mean I'm a terrible person. And it doesn't mean that an apology isn't warranted just because I was overstimulated and because, you know, she wouldn't do what I asked. I think kindness is always the answer, but when you are treated with a certain... I'll give you another example. It's hard to explain without the examples. Somebody told me, another adult told me to shut up yesterday. And nobody ever gets to speak to me that way. You don't tell me to shut up. You can use nicer words than that, but if a person is trying to communicate a need or a problem with you, you can ask for some time. Like, you know, maybe it's not the right time to discuss it, but nobody ever gets to say, shut up. You shouldn't be saying it in school. I know it happens all the time, but you shouldn't be saying it for sure to another adult. And I didn't ask for an apology. I just exited that conversation. And you have every right to do that too. I hope when you can find your words, you will. And then when you can find a boundary and know when there needs to be a stop to something, there needs to be a stop to something and an end. And I've had some situations, you know, you find yourself as an adult and as a parent. If you would have told me 10 years ago I'd be talking about something like this on a podcast, I'd be like, what am I, Mr. Rogers? Like, no. You know, using our kind words and like, no. But I do think it's worth putting out there, because even if it impacts one person's decisions moving forward, one little girl like I was that stands up for herself when somebody's yelling at her or whatever the case is, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. And I prayed a lot over these few situations that I'm kind of using examples from over the last week. You know, we don't want to be quick to reply. I want to be contemplative, and I am super empathetic, but don't let contemplation and empathy be mistaken for weakness. And I truly believe that's something that has happened in my life. So while I'm talking to a younger audience, I also feel like I'm kind of just trying to give a pep talk largely to people who are sensitive. I'm an interesting human because I am super emotional, but I'm also super decisive and am a natural leader, and that's an interesting combination. And sometimes I think people don't see that coming. And it doesn't matter if you're a natural leader or not. You can always stand up for yourself. And if you don't feel comfortable for any reason, get somebody who can. I've done that many times, and it was always worthwhile, particularly when you're in a setting like a school or something where there's a hierarchy and there's a set of rules. We had some junior counselors that are younger and counselors in training last week. And, you know, certain things are going to happen. Certain discipline problems are going to happen. And they came and got an adult. And that's what they should do. That's always the right thing to do. And to those wonderful kids, you know, that I was around in the last week or so, and those wonderful girls at the dance studio that just really have included my daughter and are helping her grow in her craft. And really, I just was so touched because I had her in a recital t-shirt one of the days at camp, and I hadn't noticed this, but we all sign each other's shirts after the recital. And one of them wrote a little heart. She wrote her name, and she wrote, "Your best friend." And this girl's probably 12 and my daughter's 4. And that is kindness that we don't have to extend to others, but is so needed in this world. That's something my daughter will look back on for years and appreciate. And I will too every time I wash it. So I would love to empower you to speak up. Don't let people calm your voice when you have something to say, when you have a need. Don't be afraid to set a boundary, even if it's temporary, whatever you feel like you need. Nobody needs to make you feel bad for that. But share kindness as much as you possibly can. I am in a interesting phase where my daughter's not in school yet. Most of my friends have school-aged kids, and they're dealing with things like parental controls, and they're kind of different. They're parenting at a different age group and a different level than I am. And yesterday I was talking to a friend while we were at the play area at the mall, and we were just talking about her older girls, and we were just talking about how hard it is to grow up with technology right now. You just have access to everybody's information all the time. I truly want to say that I can't imagine growing up this way. I can understand wholeheartedly why it is challenging to grow up in this generation of all of your information being everywhere, pictures being shared. I mean, it is completely different than I had no camera on my phone growing up. I didn't have a phone until I was 16, and it was a dinosaur. So it's hard for me to imagine. But the other thing that I want to say is lean in to the good aspects of that. Lean into being able to check in on your friends, because you do have more access to them. Don't assume everything's okay. You know when you're being a bully. You know when you're being a bystander. We can feel those things in our gut. Like, our conscience will tell us. There's things that I can still remember. I have a class reunion coming up. 20 years, which is crazy. Been out of high school 20 years. There are still situations where I didn't stand up for somebody. It wasn't necessarily me being the one saying it. I don't think that's really in my repertoire. But still situations I can remember to this day. I can remember the names and the faces of the people involved that I wish I would have stood up for the person that was being bullied. And you will never regret standing up for something and having a purpose and a meaning. I'm not saying punch people, I'm not saying that, so don't twist it. But you won't regret being that kind of a human. Those are the things you'll look back on. And there have been people over the years of me kind of living my life online that have reached out and apologized for random things. Some I remember and some I don't. They have made amends with me for whatever it was, a sour ending or whatever, whether it was their fault or my fault or whatnot, nobody's fault. Because they see what I'm sharing, and they see integrity in my message and in my person. So when you look back on your yearbooks, I'm assuming you guys still do yearbooks. I think you do. We used to have a printed yearbook. I hear electronic ones are a thing too now, but when you look back on the memories that you have, I wonder if that will be via social media or what, but when you look back at your 20-year reunion, let's just say, I saw some really sad things we have a Facebook group for our class, and there's a couple people, and I totally get it. I get it. One of them was like, I'm not paying $50 to come and talk to people that bullied me. And that makes me sad, because they're understandably still upset, and I don't want that for anybody else. So the more kind you can be, the more you can use technology to the advantage, whether it's, checking in on friends, or whether it is protecting your privacy, not sharing things about your location or your friends' locations, regularly just being a person that somebody can trust with things and telling them how much they mean to you. These are all things that I want my daughter to hear. I might just sit her down at some point and have her listen to this episode, who knows, but these are all things I would want my daughter to hear, and these were topics of conversations I had over the last week or so, and just really, truly things I hope this generation, I see so much good, I really do. I was just so impressed with all of these kids. The arts is always going to be something I'm passionate about. Speaking of the arts, this is a Girl on the Left shirt. Megan Dirks was season 2, episode 1. So beautiful artistic shirt. Love wearing it. Totally my brand. Even though it's not my brand, but totally on brand for me. But I love the arts, and I love, one of the things that really stuck with me from last week was I was helping prepare a snack, and I spent a lot of time with a lady named Leanne in the kitchen. And she's like 10 years older than me or something, I don't know, maybe more than that. And we were talking about everything. I love to be around people that have gone through things that I haven't. I love to hear what they have to say. I love to ask questions in a polite way. And we just talked about everything as we were slicing up fruit and pouring juice and doing whatever we were doing throughout the week. And, one of the things that we were talking about was just how different it is for our daughters and how blessed we are for that. Like, how many positive things have changed. And yeah, there's some hard things about being in this generation, but like so many positive, wonderful, for instance, her daughter likes to use voice notes just like I do. Like, she communicates with friends via voice note all the time, and it's therapeutic for her. It's a way. It's therapeutic for me too. I mean, I'm here talking to you, a screen, essentially right now. It's obviously therapeutic, and I enjoy doing it, but that's such a cool way that technology has advanced. So let's not get bogged down in the things of yesteryear, and let's not speak that into our kids, is my point. It used to be this way, and I can't even imagine what life, it's fine to say it, acknowledge it, and then we move on. Don't be like from Napoleon Dynamite, like the character of Uncle Rico. He gets stuck in like high school. Don't get stuck there. We've all lived a lot since then, as far as like my high school experience goes, and I want nothing but the best for anybody, regardless of anything that has ever happened in the past. So that's what I would hope my daughter would hear. And as I was talking and we were preparing all these snacks and things, one of the things that was so neat was her daughter had been doing this camp, I want to say like 10 years probably. I mean, she's almost 18, and she had been doing the camp since she was a youngster. And the arts specifically are something that I've, dance, singing, theater. I'm not really a handcrafty person necessarily all the time, but the arts in this camp provide a place where everybody fits in. And we need to provide places online, on social media, on the internet, in our friend groups, just like those voice notes. They have done so much for me, communicating with my friends, especially during COVID, having the opportunity to do things like Zoom and voice note. I can't imagine life without it. So let's lean into those things, and let's keep creating those spaces, and let's view it, positively, because that camp only exists for 1 week, but she has been volunteering every single year that her daughter has been at that camp, and I hope I can do the same thing, because it's that important to us that kids have the arts and they have a place that they can fit in and feel accepted, loved, and be themselves. So if you don't have friends like that in your life, whether you're my age or whether you're a youngster listening, those people are out there. It's hard to figure out and to navigate that, for sure. And you're going to lose friends and gain friends. I used to really look at it as like I was trying to collect as many as I could, and it's just not the case. It's hard to see that now if you're young. But just know that people are out there. They want to be known by you. They like the same things as you, and you just have to find them. So the internet is a great way, personally, that I have found people like me and kept connection with them, even when they weren't in physical proximity to me. So that's where we're going to leave it today. I just want to just pray for the world, because I was so encouraged. I was also reading a study that was talking about the up-and-coming generation returning to the church, and I was so encouraged by that. I was sharing that with a friend yesterday, and I just think there's so many good things. I'm done getting bogged down in the negative things. It's easy to do some days. I want to be a light, and I want to share meaningful things, like hopefully some of these tips were helpful. And, if it's not for you, it's not for you. You just move along. No harm, no foul. Stand up for somebody. Please, don't be a bystander. Stand up for what's right. Don't be a bully. Oh my goodness. Living and working online is a trip sometimes. I've got a lot of technology in the works these days where a lot of, like if a certain word is even said on my page, it automatically deletes it, blocks the person, just because I don't have time for it. I don't have time for the negativity. I lived that for a long time. I felt fear in things I would post, and that's not healthy. That's not how we find our like people, but they are out there. So if you're finding this on a hard day for you, I understand. There's going to be better ones. Keep going. Don't you dare give up. And if you're finding this on a happy day for you, I'm super pumped for you. I love that for you. Go pull somebody else up. That's the human thing. That's what we're supposed to do. Find somebody that needs a friend, be a friend, and help somebody else. All right. I appreciate you for listening so much. I will have the regular interview format back next week. Thank you again.